All right. Well, thanks for playing along and welcome. So this is the June 28th seminar on using social media in science communication. And we were happy to see that so many people were interested in joining. So I'm going to introduce Rose. So my name is Valerie Sloan. I work at the National Center for Atmospheric Research. My background is in Arctic and Alpine climate science, like glacier history. And in the last several years, I've been working in career development kinds of efforts with interns and grad students and postdocs, and I love it. So happy to see you, happy to be here. And I'm going to introduce Rose. Go ahead, Rose. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rose. I'm a graduate student in biological oceanography starting this fall. I'm a science communicator, and I am one of the lead sort of social media experts for a nonprofit organization called Black and Marine Science, and I create a lot of their content.
Well, thanks. Do you want to share your slides, Rose? Or do you want me to?
So give me just a second for someone who creates content. I'm not that technologically savvy, so let me know if you guys can see that.
Yes, we can.
Okay, sweet. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about using social media for science communication. So like I said, my name is Rose. I'm a science communicator and a content creator. And I kind of want to start just a little bit with how I started doing science communication. I started doing infographics. I liked the idea of being able to share bite-sized pieces of, science and information in a very sort of shareable way. So I'm from the islands, I'm from Dominican Republic. So for us, a lot of communication happens through, apps like WhatsApp. So I thought it'd be really cool to sort of create these things that are educational and can be shared very easily. Another thing I do a lot of is videos. I am almost always every day in front of a camera and recording, and it's the worst thing ever because it's so awkward for me to see my own face on my computer screen every day. But videos are obviously, in the day of YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, they're a great way to share information in a very quick way. And sort of one of the things that I focus on a lot is current news. I'm sure you guys were up to date with what was happening with the Titan submersible. Let me know in the comments if you guys saw it as it was happening and you guys were following it live as it was happening. I know I was, and I was communicating about it because I realized as we were going through the motions and posting things, people were getting so much information just so wrong. And another example of, mediums that you can use are blogs. Blogs are great. A lot of scientists use blogs, and it's a great way for people who love to read just to be able to share, condensed versions of research, because I don't know about you guys, but like for me, one of the quickest ways to get me to fall asleep is making me read a scientific article. Like no fail, every time I can't sleep, I pull up a scientific article and I zonk right out. So blogs are a great way that you can share this information and make it a lot more interesting without it being bogged down by so much jargon. And just for fun, we decided to show you guys one of these. Where someone's like, Volkswagen Italy, please never change your Instagram handle, because it's just so hilariously inappropriate, and the fact that nobody saw this written out on paper and thought, yeah, no, we're good to go, is just beautiful. So part one, let's talk about how social media has impacted how you learn and or share information. So you can either unmute yourself or let us know in the chat, because we'd love to hear, your thoughts on that. I know for me, it's changed drastically the way I share information. I'm pretty sure we all have that one, crazy aunt or uncle who's like, I just saw a post on Facebook, that says that the aliens are in our backyard. So it has changed the way I feel like that we as a society communicate, right? And let us know in the comments, or unmute yourself, whichever you prefer, which social media platform you prefer the most. For me personally, it happens to be Instagram. I love videos, but I also love sharing pictures. So you get the best of both worlds, right?
Yeah, take a minute. Oh, can we go back?
Yeah.
Just want to see what people say. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Oh yeah, YouTube. I like YouTube too.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Didn't think LinkedIn was going to get any love.
Instagram and Twitter. Cool. Thank you. It's great to see. Go ahead, Rose.
So I know some people think that, social media is a little bit silly and that it cannot be used for, something serious, but social media platforms have transformed the way we talk to each other, right? Like, I don't think there's anybody who does not have one social media platform on their phone. And they've changed how we share information with friends, with colleagues, with family, and everyone else, right? It's become an integral part of how we as a society communicate. So for science specifically, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter are considered those big three platforms that are often used for science communication that aren't dedicated specifically to science. But within the last 3 to 4 years, we've seen an increase in both Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube catching up with science communication platforms, with more and more everyday people even just creating, content and sharing it, which has been super awesome to see. So we also want to take, are you interested in science communication, and what are your goals for science communication? For me, I wanted to be able to share information with the general public and sort of hopefully get people excited about the science that I was doing, and then just science in general. So that was sort of my big goal as to why I started doing science communication. And I'd love to hear your guys' goals. If you could let me know.
Give them a few minutes. I mean, to think about it and write it or speak about it, because we do want to know how you might be interested in using science communication or social media with science communication.
And you can put it down in the chat or unmute, whatever makes you feel most comfortable.
And because we do this all the time, we've been trained that we can wait a long time for people to respond. Yeah, Bueller? So anybody want to speak instead of the chat? How would you like to use social media in science communicating science? Any idea? Do you want to make like brand yourself as a certain kind of scientist? Okay, here we go, make a podcast. Cool. And what would the topic be, Justin, or topics? I use it a lot for like Twitter to find out what's going on now today, in both in terms of science and also in terms of what's going on in the scientific community, in terms of more like the rights of people.
Motion graphic animation is really cool.
Okay. Updates and news on climate tech research. That's cool. I like that. Right.
Podcast.
The threats of severe. Yeah, that's excellent. I love that, because people are going to be going to these platforms more than they are going to necessarily go to TV. I don't know about you, but I don't even have TV anymore. And so it's a great place to get the updates on the weather. Oh yeah, graphic animation. Yeah, getting people inspired to learn more about climate science through video and different documentaries. Challenge common misinformation in pop culture. Yeah, there is a lot of it. There are talks about this topic. And then Sarah says, I'm interested in being able to spread scientific information to a wide audience in an accessible way, especially with...
Hello? Okay.
Hello?
Okay, there we go.
You can't hear me? Can you not hear me?
Especially current news. I feel like that's so important. And it's very especially as scientists, right? It's like we kind of are the experts on certain things. So being able to share that directly with the public without a middleman misinterpreting or sort of changing your findings is such a huge thing to me.
Mhm. Thanks. Can you hear me, Rose?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, you can go ahead and move forward if you want. Oh, wait, there's another comment. I'll let you take it.
I love using LinkedIn to share science information as it seems to provide the best platform to share articles, posts, etc., without a word limit, unlike Twitter. That is true. In Twitter, you got to be very, very selective with what you say because they try to cut you off, which is why you always see the giant threads on Twitter. It's like, we're going to say what we have to say. We don't care how many loopholes we have to jump through. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So, like we said, social media has sort of changed the way scientists communicate their science. Like on the right-hand side, you have scientists now being able to share their findings and their information with the public without there being a middleman, which is such a great thing. And it's also sort of, I feel like, changed the way we internally, like as scientists, communicate with one another. It wasn't until I joined Twitter that I realized failing was perfectly normal within the scientific community. And I always thought it was like, oh no, I'm failing out here. And it wasn't until, we were actually connected with other scientists using social media that I realized it's not that bad. We all fail and that's okay. And so currently it's estimated that around 68%, or at least in 2018, when they did a study, that 68% of Americans get their news from social media. 47% of scientists connected with the American Association of Advancement of Sciences, or AAAS, use social media to follow new discoveries and discuss science. And 77% of scientists participated in some type of social media, with 85% seeing social media affecting their decision-making or, their thought processes. So we are using it more and more, both from the scientific side and from the general public side. So it just makes sense that we bridge that gap, and it makes science, in my opinion, a lot more accessible to the everyday person that is not an expert. So why scientists should be using social media. For example, I got ripped into one by one of my professors once, who was like, what you're doing is silly. Like, you shouldn't spend any time on social media. Go back to the lab and do your research. So I was like, I tried to come up with ideas to tell him why we needed more scientists using social media. And obviously it boosts your professional profiles. It gets you recognition and gets you out there and FaceTime with people that you might not necessarily always be able to have access to. It's a great tool for networking and recruiting students. It's a great way to reach a new audience. I mean, there's people out there, who aren't scientists, who follow us, for example, on Black and Marine Science, who constantly tell us, they're like, I'm not a scientist. I just like to learn about these things because they sound cool. And you can act as a public voice for science, right? A lot of times people tend to be disconnected from scientists because they kind of think that we're weird and stuck up. And it's a way for us to sort of just brand ourselves and be like, hey, we're a person just like you. Yes, we're doing science. And yes, we have sort of this expertise in something, but we are literally all just the same. And it's making science accessible. There's a huge issue, especially with, scientific articles being hidden behind paywalls, that makes science very inaccessible. And this is something that we can do to spread science and make sure that everybody has access to it. Online outreach can help get funding. Obviously, like as a scientist, that's huge. There's a whole reason why NSF literally has a broader impacts category. And, you're making open science and collaboration. You're putting yourself out there, and you're really sort of able to make those connections that you wouldn't normally be able to make, right? Like, I talk to people who live in Alaska, I talk to people who live in Spain and in Africa, and without social media, we wouldn't have access to, all of these great connections. So studies have shown that connections between public communication, increased visibility of research, and a greater number of citations. So it's beneficial to us, right, as scientists, to use social media because it gets us more recognition. And scientists who engage in public communication tend to be more academically productive. And it makes science more engaging and relatable for members of the general public. It doesn't all have to be boring and stuffy. We can make science really exciting and get people really excited and talking about it. So how do I start? you just do it. For me, I spent so much time when I was like, well, I want to, use social media for science communication, thinking of ways to start. And I realized until I put that first post out there, all of that thinking about it was really just for nothing. It's really just pull the plug, post what you want to post. You have an idea, think of an idea and just do it. Like, don't beat around the bush. So one of the things that you want to think about when you're trying to start using social media is, who is your audience? Who is it that you're trying to reach? Are you trying to reach younger people? Are you trying to reach children? Are you trying to reach adults in their 30s or their 40s? Do you want to connect with journalists, other scientists, the general public? Do you just want to talk to everybody? And it's really important that you kind of tailor your strategy to who it is that you're trying to reach. For example, obviously, if you're trying to reach a younger audience, you're going to more likely be inclined to use something like Instagram or TikTok. If you're trying to reach other scientists, a lot of them tend to hang out on Twitter and Facebook. Journalists, if you want to get your science out there on front, news articles, then journalists tend to mostly occupy the Twitter space. A wider audience or just a general audience, you're probably going to want to go somewhere along the lines of Facebook and Twitter. And things that are now, especially nowadays, catching up a lot more is YouTube and blogs. And Joe Schmo can make a YouTube channel nowadays. And really, it doesn't take a lot to be considered a content creator, right? Like, if you create content, you're a content creator. So anybody can use these platforms, and everybody has access to these platforms, which is what makes them so great. Podcasts too. Yeah. I haven't gotten really into podcasts, and I'm mad about that because I probably should. So if you guys have any good like science related podcasts that you can recommend that of, let me know in the comments. I'd love to check them out. And what is your goal, right? Because when I sort of think about science communication, I think of the who, what, when, where, and why, right? What is your goal with this? What are you trying to share? Who are you trying to reach? Are you trying to just increase citations for your paper? Are you trying to start, open data and sharing? Are you trying to get feedback? Because that was a thing for me. Right before I do any presentations, I tend to sort of do a social media post about my research just to get people's feedback. And because I know a lot of the times that the questions I will get asked at a presentation, someone's probably going to ask me that on social media about it. Are you trying to increase the visibility of your research, or the translation of science for a broader audience? Or are you recruiting students? I know during late summer towards the end of the year, I'll go on Twitter and you see hundreds of professors recruiting students, or students looking for professors. Are you looking for an outlet for your opinions? Are you trying to get media coverage, or are you even just looking for a way for collaboration, right? I know a lot of people who have used social media, and now they're collaborating with people that they met on social media, which was great. So one of the big things when you're thinking about, what type of content you want to create is to sort of choose your niche, right? Like, what are you presenting? How are you trying to present it? What medium are you going to choose? Some people really don't like being in front of a camera and don't like, filming videos. Are you trying to do posters? Are you trying to do, infographics? Are you trying to just share pictures with, information about them? It's kind of important for you to choose your niche, which is not to say that you're going to be forever stuck in it. Obviously, as people evolve, we change over time, and so does our content. And that's perfectly okay. It's just sort of trying to figure out what you want to focus on, and staying within that is important. And trying to figure out what your niche is also going to help you stand out, right? For example, there are certain pieces of content that I create, like my current news reels that I do on Instagram, or my infographics, where people are immediately, when other people share it, they're like, hey, Rose created that. And it's sort of making yourself memorable, right? By choosing what direction you want to go in, and sort of really honing in on that. So I'm not really sure, like, what do you guys think you guys would want to create? Like, what type of content would you want to create? Like, would you like to create videos or pictures or infographics or blogs? Let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys actually would be interested in. Val, what would you do? You're muted. Infographics or pictures, those are nice.
Yeah, I was going to say I like doing graphic design, and I haven't done a whole lot, but photography and graphic design. But I like using social media to share news that I come across. I haven't produced really anything. You meant like if we were to produce something, right?
Yeah, if we were to produce something, what would you want to do? Posters or a comic? A comic would be really cool.
Oh, a comic would be great.
Yeah. Can we just get like a comic about the silly adventures of scientists failing?
Yeah, that's a great idea. We need more humor.
We do. It wasn't until I went on Twitter that I realized how much other people also screw up. Like, I had like a whole disaster one time where I accidentally killed 500 fish overnight, and I was just like a mess. I went home, I was crying. I was like, I'm never gonna make it as a scientist. And then I went on Twitter and someone's like, oh, I've done that before too. And I was like, really? You've messed up too? They're like, oh yeah, I screwed up, like an entire summer's worth of experiments. I was like, okay, I feel better now.
Right. Anybody want to unmic or unmute and tell us, Wendy, any chance you would tell us more about your idea of a comic strip? No pressure to talk though, if you don't want to.
So I'm just going to leave this here for you guys to muse over it for a little bit, in case anybody else wants to also let us know later on what they would like to create. When creating content, you need to be concise and clear, right? You need to be concise and clear about what it is that you're trying to convey. And transparency and accuracy are absolutely key when creating content, especially as scientists, because we always want to make sure that what we're saying is factually accurate and we're not spreading misinformation. You want to think about how impactful whatever it is that you're going to produce is going to be. Obviously, the goal is always to be as impactful as possible. For example, when the whole Titan submersible debacle was going on, we were creating that content with a clear sort of vision in mind that we wanted to educate people about deep sea exploration and how these things could happen. And purposefulness, there has to be a purpose to what you do. At least for me, I try to have a sort of set goal in mind. I don't just create something for the sake of creating, unless I'm posting pictures of underwater creatures that I found, because that's always fun. I was very proud of the fact that I just recently went to Spain and I was scuba diving and I found nudibranchs, and I was so excited about that. And apparently there's just a whole community of people who love nudibranchs on Instagram that I had no idea about, but I'm glad that the little sea slugs are getting some love. You want your content to be relatable. I always try to be as relatable as possible. So I try very purposefully not to come across, as like snobby or arrogant or, oh, I'm the only expert in this. You want to be relatable to the people that you're sharing it with, and you want to be responsible with what you share, right? We really don't need more misinformation being shared. There's already enough quote unquote fake news out there. So you have to be very responsible with not only the content that you produce and you share, but the content that other people produce that you are just resharing.
Right.
So Val, did you want to talk about this?
You go ahead.
So with a lot of these science communication on social media requires a plan, a strategy, and constant reevaluation, right? Social media is also constantly changing. So to be successful, you must be active. And social media is a landscape of dialogue, not of lecturing. It's a two-way street, which requires engagement. but it also easily feeds polarization and content and conflict. So try to skip them, provide correct information, but never engage in virtual fights, which I'm guilty of sometimes having to pull myself back from, because sometimes, we have Twitter fingers, right? So sometimes I was like, no, I got to tell this person why they're wrong. And I was like, is it worth it though? Is it worth all the notifications you're about to get after this? So, you have to be mindful with it. And especially as these giant corporations, which I mean, some of them are funny, right? Like, I don't know. Have you guys seen like the Wendy's Twitter? Because Wendy's Twitter is just hilarious, but that's kind of on brand with what they do. Versus some other companies kind of put their foot in their mouth without realizing that they're putting their foot in their mouth. For example, a while ago, there was a hashtag being used about domestic violence called, hashtag why I stayed. And DiGiorno's, I'm sorry?
Well, there were two, why I stayed and why I left.
Why I stayed and why I left. And DiGiorno's decided that they would use the hashtag of why I stayed is because you had pizza. And they didn't realize that it was about domestic violence or domestic abuse. And Scott Paul said it perfectly. It's an example of a brand using a trending topic without understanding the context. So it is important for you to know what it is that you're retweeting or what hashtags you're using, and sort of be very mindful of that, so you don't put your foot in your mouth, kind of like DiGiorno's Pizza did, and then they had to issue a public apology, which it was a little bit funny, to us, and to us now, but like obviously in the moment it wasn't funny for them to be using a serious hashtag, to promote their pizza.
I have a question. You can do an expression, hands up, if you want a reaction. Is how many of you have used a hashtag without looking it up first? I know I have. Well, maybe it's just because I'm not the younger generation, that you're all good at that. Okay. Thanks, Rose.
Okay, so let's jump right into the tips and tricks on how to get started. First of all, it's important. I like to think of this as a checklist to self-assess your science communication on social media. One thing that we just mentioned is super important is fact-checking content. You want to be really cut and clear with what you're presenting, but you want to be factual. You want to be able to link your references, sources in your content. You want to disclaim any conflict of interest that concerns you or others. And you want to consider gender balances, especially when selecting interviewees, or, when you're talking about like the type of stuff that you're sharing, you sort of, you don't want to have any biases in it, right? So a clear example of that. So back in 2022, around July-ish, this news article sort of went viral saying that 90% of the plankton in the Atlantic Ocean were gone. And I don't know if you guys can see the number there, but it was liked 86,000 times. So it was pretty much like it was everywhere, is this post. And then when we actually read the article, it turned out that the article was completely bogus. And I don't necessarily blame the people who were sharing it, because they might just not have really understood what was actually being said. For example, there was just a whole bunch of discrepancies within the article itself, talking about how only certain areas were sampled. And I don't know how much you guys know about plankton, but plankton undergo something called divertical migration, and it was only sampled during the day by people who were not properly trained to sample. So it really was a misinterpretation of the article, when, the article was saying that 90% of the plankton were gone, but it was all completely fabricated, and it was just bad science reporting in general. And a lot of scientists basically dissembled this paper afterwards, and then it turned out it was more or less fake news. It was inaccurate. So being mindful of what you share and fact checking what you share is super important when it comes to science communication. A checklist. Another thing is to focus on is presentation and style. Obviously, you're going to have your own sort of look, or eventually you will develop your own look. But it's also important to prefer using like narrative and storytelling instead of, just lecturing at people. Nobody wants to be lectured at. Everybody sort of wants to be a part of the conversation, right? So using a narrative of storytelling, it will bring you a lot more engagement. And include a call to action, or, ask questions, invite to post and or do something, it's always a great way to get people to engage with you. And it's a two-way street, right? Science communication is a two-way street, especially on social media. It's no fun when you post something and you get no comments and likes. So putting out a call to action, or, asking people to comment or question is always a great way to sort of ramp up that engagement. Ensure that content and the structures are consistent. For example, your titles and your pictures. And it's really something that you sort of pick up as you go along, right? You find your voice and you find your style and your way of presenting this information as you go along. And ensure that the language is clear, to your target audience, because ultimately the reason why you're trying to communicate the science is because you're trying to reach a certain audience. So make sure that your language is always clear. So effective science communication strategies, adaptability is key. Your target audience may change depending on your content and the topics. For example, whether you're talking about like vaccines or climate change or deep sea submersibles, your target audience is always going to change. And engagement is crucial. Social media is a two-way street, so you should always be engaging with your audience. So these are some great examples of, ways that, companies and brands will include their audience and actually make it an active engagement. So for example, using polls is a great way, to get people engaged. On Instagram, especially when you do stories or you do interactive reels nowadays, you can do it as well. Have a call to action, ask people to comment, one or the other down below, creating stories. For example, we do a lot of trivia. We'll have trivia Thursday sometimes, where, the goal is really just to get people engaged with the content and get them up and active. And comments, right? Like when people comment, like make sure you respond, or, you have people tag other people. It's really just about trying to get yourself out there and get people engaged with the content that it is that you are providing. Don't you have to be verified to use polls on Twitter? I don't think so. I've used polls on Twitter and I'm definitely not verified, unless they just recently changed that.
They undid the whole verification thing, but I'm not totally sure.
I think it's new.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, we could argue about Twitter as a platform as a whole. Let me know actually what you guys think. Do you guys think there's going to be something new that's not Twitter that people are going to switch over to? Because I know a lot of people think Twitter right now is just a hot mess. I'd love to hear you guys' take on it. I'm still waiting for something new to pop up. It's always been a hot mess. That is true.
Oh.
Video platform. I love Twitter and it's hot mess. I never know in the morning when I log on to Twitter what I'm gonna get, because sometimes it's like at 12 p.m. you're just like, you know what, that's enough Twitter for today.
So
And I don't
Kick video platform. I want to check that out.
Were you guys following on Twitter with this whole submersible situation that was going on with the Titan submersible? Because Twitter takes no prisoners and was absolutely insane. The memes were insane. They were. And I was like, oh.
Like mean? Or funny, yeah, or mean?
But hilarious. It was. I felt so bad.
Yeah, some of the things were really, really terrible, but Twitter, yeah, they just don't care. It's just chaotic. It's just chaos all the time. I love it.
Yeah, I love how you can see what's going on, compared to reading papers and things like that in that week.
Because it's just so immediate too.
Mhm.
So that's enough of Twitter for right now. Give me just a second here. So think about the impact on society, right? I think that is a huge thing. It's part of the reason why I want to do science communication as much as I do. I really try to address real life issues and things that are happening right then and there, like the Titan submersible, because I saw a post where someone was like, I think there was a slow implosion. And I was like, sir, there's no such thing as a slow implosion. What are you talking about? So part of the reason why I do current news and things that are currently happening is to address real life issues, and try to aim at changing users' behaviors or providing them with context to current issues as opposed to just lecturing at them. I try to really get a conversation started on social media that sort of talks about, certain things, and I don't ever want to lecture people. I want it to be sort of an interactive experience, and I want them to always get the feeling that, my platform is a safe space for them. That's really important to me. And target and tailor your message to a specific group of users, right? Like everybody is different, and the way you share that information needs to be adjusted. For example, if you're trying to reach a target audience of like high school students, obviously the wording that you use and the language that you use is going to be very different as if you were talking to your peers on about a certain topic. And make sure to follow ethical standards and or consider social responsibility of your content. I try to be very mindful with my content, especially content that gets used in educational purposes, because of the fact that I have a responsibility as a scientist and as an educator to be as factually accurate as I possibly can. And when using social media, keep in mind that your choices can impact users' engagements and reach. So, for example, the type of content that you're posting, such as text, pictures, links, and videos, text characteristics, the length, the use of hashtag mentions of either people or companies, the uses of links, and the time of posting. I had to learn that one the hard way. You really don't realize that the time you post is super important, when the most people are going to engage with your content. For me, like if I post like in the morning versus in the afternoon, I see a huge difference with how many people see it and how often it gets shared or how many people engage with that content. So it's super important to be mindful of it. And to have a good social media strategy, right? You don't always want to post the same thing. So for example, switching it up, but you have to be consistent. You don't always want to post the same content, but you kind of always should be posting at least, so the algorithm continuously pushes you forward, or else you kind of just get lost in the algorithm in the Twitter sphere and in the Instagram sphere. So for example, this one makes a good point of saying, like post a story on Monday, and on Tuesday post a blog link, and on Wednesday do a Q&A, and on Thursday do a video, and that way you're constantly switching up the content that you're posting, but it's also a lot more fun for you. Like I don't like constantly posting the same thing over because I get bored of it. So for example, down here on the left-hand bottom side, we see sort of a good example of, something that's engaging. There's a call to action, like tell us why you love Calgary. It's sort of short and sweet, which sometimes that is a lot better than just having like a giant wall of text, and it has a link to a video. Versus on the right hand side, it's basically just a giant blob of text that is very easily scrolled past on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, or anywhere you want to post it, because people are visual. We're visual people, right? We tend to gravitate towards something that catches our eye first, which a video or an image will do, as opposed to just a block of text. And then it's also important to consider what platforms you're posting on. For example, on Facebook, images and videos are great, as well as on Instagram. But on Twitter, for example, images and links tend to be a lot better. And on LinkedIn, links and articles and like posts are super great to post. So it's just one more thing to keep in mind, like where you want to share this information, so you can adapt how you're going to share this information. And Val, did you want to take this one?
Oh, sure. So yeah, there's some things like people who have companies that have somebody who kind of go wild. Like we had somebody at NCAR who was posting very politically hot stuff, and that wasn't really appreciated. So if you look at the Red Cross, for example, down the right, we've deleted the rogue tweet, but rest assured the Red Cross is sober and we've confiscated the keys. So it's, it's a nice humorous way of apologizing and saying, we're on top of it. So that's quite good. And the top right, so the auto company Chrysler accidentally dropped an F-bomb to thousands of followers. And I think it was an employee who wrote this, somehow it got in there. I find it ironic that Detroit is known as the Motor City, and yet no one here knows how to effing drive. So that was probably a bad moment for that guy. Over on the left, so there's JP Morgan, which is the richest bank in the US. It has done a lot of things that are not admirable to the people of the United States, including the whole bad bundling mortgage business some years ago, where they had to pay $13 billion settlement for what happened, but it affected so many people. Anyhow, they had a Q&A on Twitter, and the questions, they were like, okay, this guy that they got to talk was this like super up there, powerful guy, and in that world of JP Morgan, but he got on this Q&A and people were writing things like, do you have any self-awareness? Did you always want to be part of a vast corrupt criminal enterprise, or did you break bad? And did you have a specific number of people's lives you needed to ruin before you considered your business model a success? So they had to shut it down pretty quickly, and they didn't pick it up again. They're like, yeah, that wasn't such a good idea.
No, it wasn't, but sometimes it's hilarious to watch people sort of get their comeuppance. And one thing I always have to remind myself, it's okay to step away and log off. I feel like social media, while it is a great tool, it can also be very tiring. There's I sometimes just take days where I'm like, I'm not even going to log on to anything, and I'm not going to check anything, and I'm going to turn off notifications, and that's okay. It's okay to take a break and realize, that while social media is a great communication tool, it should never be the only thing you focus on, and nothing is worth your physical, emotional, or mental well-being. And I say that about just being connected in general. Like sometimes it really is just nice to be completely disconnected from everything. Yeah, sometimes I just need to go touch some grass and just be away from the internet for a little while. I don't know. Do you guys feel the same way? Do you guys sometimes do like no screens whatsoever for like a full day, or just completely disconnect from the world? Like I'd love to hear what you guys also do to take breaks and to disconnect from the world. Like for me, it often tends to be scuba diving or snorkeling, or just walking through a forest and pretending, that I'm an explorer and looking for moss.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I leave my phone outside of my bedroom. Yeah.
Mm.
I'll step away from social media. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, even after the Titan disaster, I actually had to just like take a break for 2 days after that, because I went down the rabbit hole of ships sinking and things imploding and the Titanic. And then for some reason, I watched a whole video of the Titanic sinking in real time. And I was just like, you know what? I need to get away from here. I need to log off of everything right now.
There's a video.
There is a 2-hour and 45-minute video that shows the sinking of the Titanic in real time.
Grim.
Yeah. And I watched the whole thing. And that was the point where I realized, I was like, okay, I need to log off. Like I'm done for the day.
And the other thing is that I find I can spend so much time, it's like, oh, it's already 45 minutes later than when I woke up. And I'm just, going through, looking, reading, and, I learn a lot, but it's also it's like fun and not the best use of all my time.
So yeah, I feel like it's sometimes important for us to remember, like, not even just for science communication, just, social media in general. Sometimes we just need to take a break and step away. And I also wanted to talk about how impactful it can be, though, because I feel like social media really has just changed the way we as human beings live our lives. All of these organizations that you see on the screen were organizations that were largely started because of social media. Every single one of these organizations, these people met on social media and got together to, form these nonprofit organizations. And I work for both Black Women in Ecology, Evolution, and Marine Science, as well as Black and Marine Science. And I kind of just wanted to talk about it a little bit because of the fact that, science communication has been so impacted by these organizations. So, for example, Black and Marine Science started with a tweet. It was during that whole issue with the Black birder in New York, and it sort of turned into a thing. It turned into a whole thing where like people were like, now Black Birders Week, and then Dr. Tiara Moore, who's the founder and CEO of Black and Marine Science, was like, well, where's Black and Marine Science Week? And it's spiraled. We're on our third year now, and we have grown as an organization immensely. We have full-time employees now. We have, staff that work part-time. And it really started from a tweet. So who would have known, that something so grand would have come out, like now we're a full-fledged nonprofit organization that gets students scuba certified. We get students, experience in the field. We're providing people with all of these opportunities, and it's great to think that, it started on a computer screen or on a phone screen. In fact, it's gotten to the point where we have actually been awarded, we just got our first big grant of $2 million to support students, early career scientists, to go to different conferences. So it's a 5-year program, and we'll be sending, 30 people every year to a scientific conference. So it's super exciting, and, to be a part of it and to see it grow from a tweet has been,
That's amazing.
It's been chef's kiss.
That's amazing, from a tweet to a $2 million grant, and she's been getting other grants too.
Yeah. This is just like the very first grant that's just for Black, like just FEMS. So it's been really incredible just to sort of watch it grow and to be a part of that. So, And these are all of my social media handles. If anybody wants to follow me and connect, or if you have questions or comments, and I'm more than happy to take them.
Wow, you got some cool handles.
So it's funny because it was a fun play, like it's Psycho, it's pronounced Psycho, and a lot of people didn't realize that. So people that I've just met now were like, I never realized that your social media handles literally says Psycho. They're like, I thought it was like science communication, and I was like, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek thing, right?
That's
so yeah, if anybody has any questions,
maybe you can stop sharing and you can see people. Or any ideas that we didn't cover, or tips on new social media we should be looking at, kind of thing. I did hear about, there were people moving from Twitter to something called Mammoth or something like that. But I don't know what else is happening there. Here's a question for you, Rose. In the chat, how did you get started on your platforms?
So it's funny because I originally started with this one post about super volcanoes, and I was kind of just like sitting around, and I was like, I kind of want to do some science communication work. I kind of want to talk about cool, different scientific topics. And I started back then. My first social media was on Instagram, and it was a blog, and it was called A Weekly Science Dose. And I kind of just one day I woke up and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it today. And then I kind of just pulled the plug and made my first post and talked about a super volcano, and people seem to be really interested in it. So it was really cool.
So now you do it weekly? Or you used to do it weekly?
Yeah, I still post content weekly. I try to post at least twice a week.
Nice. Is anybody else doing this kind of thing? Oh, sorry, here's a question. How was the learning curve with social media content, like making videos? I think you're muted, Rose.
Very daunting. So I was not a graphic designer when I started, and I was also not a video editor. That was never my intention. It's sort of, I've been teaching myself how to do these as a way to share my content and be able to share my creations. But it was difficult. I was very much so self-taught. Like it wasn't always easy, but it's been great because now these are skills that I use for other things as well.
I bet. Okay. Well, if there are not any other questions, let's just unmute and give Rose a hand or use a reaction. Thank you, Rose. That was awesome. Lots of clapping. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. And we plan to send you the slides and some other resources, like the recording at some point of this. So thank you so much for coming. It's really a cool topic.
Yeah, and like I said, if any of you guys want any more information, feel free to follow me. And if you want to get started, I'm more than happy to help.
And here's Rose's email, just in case you want that. And here's my email. We're happy to help with anything that you think we can help with. Cool. All right. Well, you have a good evening, everybody, and thanks again for coming. You're welcome.
Bye, Val.
Oh, wait, don't go. And smile. I'm going to do another one. The lighting is really good. And look up a little bit. Okay, cool. That was great. Yay. I loved it. And it was just under an hour.
Yeah, I know. I realized I went a little bit too fast, but
No, it wasn't too fast. I think it was perfect. People don't necessarily want it to go longer than an hour.
yeah, so that was okay.
Yeah. They were a bit quiet, but oh well. And chiming in, but at least a few did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did it. Yay.
Hey.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so yeah, we can edit this and you could share it with T if you wanted. And then do you have time to do the anti-harassment one that this woman keeps asking me about? Like editing the video?
Yeah.
I'll let her know that it's being worked on.
Okay.
Yeah. Yay. And put down all your hours. I think at this point now, like I was told that for the summer, they're just going to figure it out. So, you don't have to skimp. Like,
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
All right, Val, I'm gonna go get some water. I'm so dehydrated.
Oh, okay. Bye.
Bye.